All right. Welcome to the Falling Off the Floor podcast. This week, we have a special guest. He has been involved in recovery, the outdoor industry, skiing, mental health. I actually came across a challenge you're doing. You're doing a film challenge. So if you want to introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about what you're doing and what your recovery looks like today.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yep.
My name's Connor Nelson, and I grew up in Colorado, Winter Park specifically, and kind of like this point in my life, I'm now a filmmaker, and I run the Winter Park Film Festival and started the Alive Film Challenge, which is a mental health and addiction film challenge.
So you're in recovery yourself.
6 years in last February.
Nice. Yeah, we'll be 6-year buddies here soon.
It's exciting.
Yeah. What was the starting point for this film challenge, and what made you guys kind of push into wanting to make this thing a reality?
Yeah, I mean, so I have a good friend, Scott Klum, who was doing these film challenges, and I have really been passionate about mental health and addiction, and I kind of was looking at all the film challenges he was doing.
Yep.
And I was like, well, I haven't seen a mental health and addiction film challenge, and I really would like to get more creative films out there about these topics. And I think it also kind of brings together groups that usually have been affected by these topics together. And, I don't know, it just like kind of sparked between the three of us. It's Josh Finbo, Scott Klum, and myself. And
Awesome.
Yeah, just this will be the first year, and kind of excited to get it growing. We know it's going to grow slow, but hopefully it evolves to something beautiful in the future.
Yeah, so in terms of the challenge and people wanting to get involved and sending in pitch decks for their films, ideas, how do people get things to you for this film challenge?
Yeah, so I would check out alivefilmchallenge.com. Pretty much there's 2 rules, and the rules are: A, the films have to be about mental health or addiction.
Okay.
And they have to be between 1 and 15 minutes long.
Okay.
I guess there's 3 rules. The submission deadline date. And, that's April 11th, I believe. So we're hoping to get the films completed by then and submitted.
Of next year?
Of this coming year.
Oh, wow.
It's fast, yeah.
Yeah.
And then the top 3 films will be screened at the Winter Park Film Festival.
Awesome.
And the top film will get at least $2,000. We're trying to get a little more money involved in that.
Yeah, absolutely. So, as you mentioned, you're in recovery yourself. You've been involved in the ski world, the ski industry. We talk about this a lot on our podcast. The ski industry shies away in a lot of senses from mental health and addiction. And this is something that has started to definitely shift over the last few years. There's a lot of people that have started to come forward that maybe weren't talking about these things in the past. Big names in the sport like Simon Dumont talking about his past, and my buddy and your buddy Alex Schlopy being very open about his story. And you've seen kind of both sides of it, I assume. What was your turning point to want to come into recovery, and what got you to the point that you knew that recovery was needed?
That's a really good question. In action sports, it's kind of always been like, go as hard as you can and show no mercy, or like, don't show your battle scars. And it wasn't until like I kind of forced myself out of skiing at like the age of 21.
Yeah.
A lot of the other competitors were going to the gym and training so much more than me. And
Yeah.
instead I was going to the bar and partying with people who weren't even in the ski industry.
Yeah.
Years went by. Like I was an electrician and like kind of blue collar after that. And, I was constantly that guy like at the bar talking about, I'm going to do this cool thing or I'm going to go do that. But then I would never do any of that.
Yeah.
And I think that chipped away for a long time at like who I am as a person, because when I was skiing, like when I would tell somebody I'm going to do something, I would do it.
Yeah.
And so when you had that past of being able to do it after you've talked about it and then now you're not doing the stuff, that hurt a lot. But I think the biggest thing for me of why I got sober is just hurting my parents, constantly making them cry
Yeah.
every single night. That hurt a lot after I lost my brother in 2010 and then becoming an only child. Really, like, I was my parents' only kid at that point, so
Yeah.
hurting them really hurt me.
Yeah. I get that completely. In a podcast episode recently, I was talking about an individual that played a major role in my recovery and getting sober. I was like trying to leave this rehab. I was down really bad and like the itch was there, and I was about ready to throw away everything after having been sober for a while, and get on the phone with this guy Sam Rotundo, and he said, just let your parents sleep tonight. He was like, dude, just fucking stay there. Let your parents sleep tonight. And that line has stayed stuck in my head for years now. That it's like, God, the amount of stress I was putting on ex-girlfriends, relationships, friendships, friends, family, everything, that maybe if I just stay in this place tonight and like stay clean tonight, maybe my family can like rest easy. And that played a pivotal role in my recovery and still does today, that there's times. It's not like recovery is not just like we go to rehab, everything's better, and we never think about drinking or using or doing any of that stuff again. Like these thoughts come and they go, and the phrase that's often used is like play the tape through, of like, if I do this right now, what's the tape going to look like at the other side of the reel?
That's in rehab. Somebody taught me this, and it's kind of been like early recovery. It was pivotal. Was before you do anything, ask yourself, is this good for my recovery?
Yeah.
And like the first month, it took kind of a lot to try and remember to just say that. And like after you've said it to yourself enough, it just becomes a habit of like literally you'll put your shoes on and be like, is this good for my recovery?
Yeah.
Early on, it was like, I'm hungry. Let's go to the pub that I used to drink at. And I would ask that question and be like, I can just cook here. And taking the shoes back off. Like simple things like that, that you don't really think about until someone tells you. And then it just takes a little bit of work. But once you get it, kind of snowballs,
So what does your recovery look like today? I know, you're not working blue collar electrician job anymore. You're in cinematography and creative media. What does your recovery look like today, and what are the things that are pivotal roles in keeping your recovery going all these years later?
Yeah. For years there, I was doing 12-step meetings and kind of being really essential in that, like multiple times a week. Today, I would say creative endeavors and just kind of driving towards my goals
Yeah.
are kind of what are keeping me sober, but also doing stuff like this and working with others.
For sure.
Like this morning, I spent probably 30 minutes talking to somebody who wanted to get sober.
Yeah.
Those are kind of how I stay sober, is just it's reminding myself of where I could go if I picked it back up. And I think in a selfish way, like talking to others that are at their wits' ends, you know, you're also helping them by showing light.
Yeah.
But you're also reminding yourself, like, that's where you could go.
Yeah. That's something that was constantly going through my head when I was working in rehab. Was people would be like, "Oh, you know, it must be so good for your recovery working at a, you know, rehab and helping people." And like at the end of the day, it's stressful, like taking on a lot of people's burdens, and you know, you go home every night listening for hours to people talk about like pretty horrific things, like, as we know, and I'm sure we did those horrific things. But I would always tell people it's such a good first step reminder. Like talking with someone that is right in the beginning at their wit's end, it was a constant reminder to me, is like, I never want to be in that seat again. That seat fucking sucks. And I know that feeling, and I've been in that seat like time and time and time again. Yeah. That it was a healthy reminder for me that that's not a place I want to go back to. And, you know, I was intrigued by you and everything you're doing and your story and everything, because I have a very kind of similar outlook. I did the 12-step program. I did all of those things, and for years was like doing internships in college and stuff in creative media, and I've always kind of been involved in this world, and drugs and alcohol were a little more important for a while. And that's what my recovery looks like today. Like I did the, you know, 12-step meetings and everything for a lot of years, and I found that conversations like this, conversations with friends of mine that I met throughout my journey in recovery, and then creative endeavors like this is what keeps me sober today.
Yeah, I mean, whatever fills your cup, really, you know. Yeah. It's like I see right now too this like big shift in like mental health and addiction, like therapy and like kind of resources that are coming in.
Yeah.
And I really do think those resources are needed.
For sure.
But for me, the $1 million question is, how do you get people to not get to that point? Because once they're at that point, you're kind of trying to catch them falling through the cracks.
Yep.
And we should definitely be trying to save as many of those people as possible. But how do we get society to not get to that point?
Yeah.
And that's really the $1 million question. And I think for us, not everybody's like this, but for creatives, like, get them creating. And
yeah,
that's, you know, that's something that we've obviously found that really does fill us up.
Yeah. And I think it's important that maybe it's not a hobby or whatever it is, like you need something to fill that void. I think a lot of people in early recovery, especially, it's like filling that void is like going to an AA meeting and like being in that community aspect of you're bundled up by a lot of people, and there's, without you knowing, there's kind of people looking after you without you knowing it. Like you stop showing up to things or whatever. Mm-hmm. There's people looking out for you when you don't even realize it. Mm-hmm. And I think as you get further and further into recovery, like getting back to your hobbies or being in creative or sports or board games, whatever it may be, like you need something to fill your time and your void, because like idle time for me is typically where I really get in my head, where I'm thinking like I need to be doing something,
Yeah.
and it's really easy for my brain to be like, well, like I could go to the bar and have a couple drinks, and that idle time is can be scary.
I'm one of those people that kind of always has to drive with music on because of that exact reason,
Yeah.
You start getting into too much thought process, and like I feel like you pretty much just alluded to it, but that like overdrive of the brain can really lead to some like anxiety,
For sure.
and that anxiety can lead you into places that you don't really want to be.
Yeah.
When the anxiety kind of kicks in, you can't really think that clearly, and you end up in places like a bar or something to kind of hush it down.
Yeah.
And so staying active and keep moving forward, and that's exactly why like I want to keep continuing to put more money towards Alive and try and get people, because I know it, like especially for younger filmmakers,
Yeah.
it's hard to find money for projects. So if I can try and help with that, I know that means they're going to be making more films and staying busy.
Yeah. I love it. Like I told you, I came across this Alive film. When did you guys start this whole process?
The idea's been there for about probably around last year this time.
Yeah.
But we knew we couldn't launch, it was the first year of the Winter Park Film Festival. Just knew that like the timing wasn't right and too much was on my plate. And, we got through that, and it kind of was seeming like if we don't get going with it, we would miss another year. So launched it really quickly. 4 months ago.
Cool.
So it's pretty fresh out there, and the challenge is like getting it in front of the right people, because obviously talking to people in recovery, they have a lot of great stories.
Yeah.
Do they know how to make films? Now this is where it comes into play. Like, people with the stories also can find the filmmakers.
Yeah.
But also getting it in front of filmmakers that have had similar experiences to this is also something that, I would love to get this in front of more filmmakers that have been through recovery or experienced mental health issues. And I know we all have, because I'm sure like somebody's friend, brother, parent has dealt with this if they haven't themselves.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I think everyone has a story to a certain extent. People in recovery have some pretty wild stories. I'm sure you've heard wild ones in the room that you think to yourself as a creative, like, whoa, this would be a crazy movie, or this would be this would be quite the film. Or as someone that works in this industry myself, I'm still pretty heavily focused in the ski industry, and morphing the skiing side of things with the creative aspect of everything has been kind of a dream come true. Like when I was a kid, like young kid, maybe 10 years old, I spent a whole winter shoveling driveways to make enough money to buy, I think it was a Nikon D90 or something, like a used like D90 way back in the day, a bread loaf Nikon, because I always had this like passion for shooting photography or whatever it may be. And I remember people always saying like, man, wouldn't it be so cool if like one day you were the guy at X Games, like following, like doing the follow cams and stuff and all that. And I always, as a competitive skier, I was always like, well, I kind of want to be followed, but exactly. It's been really fun post my injury, like still finding a way to stay involved in the ski industry. And I've found that through creative media and podcasting with fellow pro skiers and people in the industry. And, this podcast, people were like pushing me to do for years. They're like, you've got to start this podcast. Cause I'd be like sitting, at a dinner party or something with a bunch of friends, and they're like, oh, tell that story. And afterwards, so many people are like, you just got to start a podcast. Like, people want to listen to this. And it's been pretty wild. Like, we started like 3 months ago or something, and the amount of people that have reached out from literally around the world, whether it's people that have also had like spinal injuries. Like, a kid in France reached out to me recently that was like, I was in a ski accident this winter, broke my back. Like, do you have any tips on... I said, first tip, stop taking the oxys.
Yeah.
I'm sure they flooded you with a lot of those. Stop taking those like ASAP. But like, it's crazy. A kid in France somehow hears the podcast
awesome.
and hears like a semblance of hope that, I've been there, done that. That pain is unmatched to anything I've ever experienced. And, it's, we got the little pup coming in to hang out with us.
Yes, we do. That's Zeppelin.
Zeppelin, hello. But yeah, that at the end of the day, I've always said with this, it's like, I don't care if this makes any money, if just one person hears it and it somehow brings them, maybe they don't take a drink that day, maybe it like gives them hope that this spinal injury is, you can come back and ski again. That's the goal with this whole thing.
No, I think what you're doing is great, because it's like, if you look at what we get presented daily with social media,
Yeah.
it's constantly a facade of like, how cool can I be? And like, nobody really is living like that life every second of every day,
Yeah, definitely not.
And what you're presenting out there is content that really shows what life is truly like. And I think we're kind of tired of this looking at other people not truly be themselves.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, that's the exact same thing like why Alive was started. It's just like, let's get content out there that's not just about acting what we think life really should be,
Yeah. We're all like, everyone in the social media and creative world, it's like kind of actors. Like, you're like playing a role. Yeah. And it's worked for a long time for a lot of people. Like, they play this role and they've figured out a way to make money, and like, great, whatever. Like, that's awesome. And that was like the kind of the niche that I found within like coming back to skiing, was like, I'm not throwing double corks anymore. I'm not like hucking my body anymore. The park almost like terrifies me these days. Like, I still ski the park and have fun and take mellow park laps, but like after this injury, it's like I reached a point that I was like, is this like really worth it anymore?
That's like I'm still grappling with that, but
Yeah.
like, I'm glad you're there. Like, reason why I live in LA and choose to live there and want to continue to live there for a while, it's because like, when I get here, I turn my addiction like mentality, like, that doesn't go away.
Yeah.
I'll go into the train park at 32 years old and like put everything on the line.
Yeah.
For what? Like, adrenaline and Instagram, like, it's kind of ridiculous, and that's why I can't live in this town, mountain town specifically. Like, maybe we'll revisit that when I'm 50, but
Yeah. I like shifted the balance and found this like love for big mountain skiing, and sure, there's like inherent risk involved. I'm dealing with a different animal now in big mountain skiing, and avalanches and like snow safety, and that's where I've like refound my love for skiing, because after the accident and then followed up with addiction, I was like, my whole identity was skiing. There was Austin Becker was a skier, and there wasn't like a lot in my head. I didn't think there was a lot else involved in that. It's like I grew up in a ski town competing. It was my entire life, and then literally one accident, and it's just like, and it's like, what do you do now? And there was a point, like, I was living on the East Coast thinking to myself, like, I'm skiing this boilerplate ice, like, this shit sucks. Like, skiing's not fun anymore. And yeah, I had a buddy last season, like, I wasn't going to buy a pass. I wasn't really going to ski anymore. And I had a buddy just be like, come on, like, we've got a crew. Let's just go skiing, like, ski to ski. Yeah. There's no coaches. There's no sponsors. Like, no one's telling me what to do. Yeah. It's just like, go ski.
So much better.
It's, oh man, it is so much fun. And man, the adrenaline's still there. I stood on top of a couple of these couloirs this winter in Alaska. Went to Alaska for the first time, and you get dropped off on some of these peaks and you look down these couloirs. It's the same adrenaline rush I used to get looking down.
But you get the option of not having to do it if you don't want to, which is freeing.
Yeah.
Because like when you have sponsors, it's like constantly like putting the boots on when you don't want to, when the weather's bad and stuff.
And that's actually the crazy thing, is that the second I started skiing the way I wanted to ski and involve myself in the industry the way I wanted to,
probably got better.
I got better, and then sponsors just came. And instead of me like reaching out to them and everything, like they're like, this is really cool what you're doing, like we want to get you involved. And
you allowed yourself like that creative ability. Like when you kind of approach sponsors too quickly, I feel like you put yourself into like a container that's hard to like break out of.
Yeah,
and
for sure.
I've definitely experienced that in my career, because like I started working with Atomic Skis when I was 14.
Yeah.
And definitely felt like I could have done a lot more in the ski industry, but like kind of kept it very like ski competition, like just competing in slopestyle is like my only path, when I could have been out like filming video parts, and could have been street skiing more, and like just big mountain even. And
it's been really cool. I think it's always been there, but I've seen this shift recently where a lot of competition skiers, you kind of reach this precipice at early 20s, like you, 21, where it's like, all right, am I going to take this thing the whole way? Am I going to do the training, the everything, and push this until I'm 30? Or it's like, you got to make that decision at that point. Like, is this my career for the next 10 years until the body gives up? And I've seen these people like shift out of the comp realm and then take their like freestyle kind of flow into big mountain skiing. And it is like some of these video parts that come out now of like people that have left kind of the park scene and brought those talents into the backcountry. It's fucking awesome,
like
man.
Parker White.
Parker White, exactly. Like, and some of these older dudes that the career would have ended at that, 28 to 32 range, and now you're seeing dudes like skiing through their 30s, big mountain stuff. The risk is still there, but it's like you're not 22 feet above a 22-foot half pipe of pure ice.
Doing quad corks.
Yeah, and, I think that shift has been kind of cool to watch in the ski industry, where I think the rise of like social media and everything has given a lot of people in our sport a platform to keep kind of the dream alive for much longer than, a competition skier. You are dead set for these years, and you're getting paid by sponsors, so you better have those, everything in line. You better meet those deadlines and everything throughout the season. You need competition results, and it's like, it's stressful, man. And it's been cool. And did you see the film Mountain on My Mind? John Padilla, and all these guys.
Mountain on My Mind. When did it come out?
Came out last year, and it's actually a film completely about mental health and skiing.
Okay. Yes, I did.
Yeah, and they've been filming this past winter for like Mountain on My Mind too, and it's been cool watching those guys. I was skiing the other day up at Copper with I ride for Dahu Boots, and the guy that kind of runs it is Dano Bruno, who has been super involved in the freestyle scene for years. And we went skiing with this kid, Benny Harrington from New Zealand. Yeah, he's like a New Zealand half-pipe skier. And even he was like, yeah, I ride for the New Zealand national team, and I travel the world, and I'm training every single day to try and be the best half-pipe skier in the world. But I was just sent a message back and forth with him the other day, and he was like, oh yeah, I'm up in Montana filming with Mountain on My Mind.
Oh, nice.
Because he like blew out both of his heels last season. He hit the coping and broke his heels, and he hasn't been competing this season. And as we know, with competition skiing, that leads into that like mental health of not knowing if you have a purpose. And
especially if you're sitting out a full year too, like,
yeah, and just watching
the progression goes so fast that it's so hard to catch up.
Yeah, and like fucking Alex Ferreira is unstoppable in the pipe, and
Hot Dog Hans.
Yeah, Hot Dog Hans being like, I think Benny's 20 or 21, and like he's the best half pipe skier in New Zealand. But then you look at Alex Ferreira, it's like that's like a tough pill to swallow if you're sitting out a whole season and watching this guy progress to levels that the sport has like never seen before.
Constantly pushing.
Yeah. So, hearing that he was like out there filming with those guys and like talking a little bit about his story, it's cool watching, especially like younger generation of like early 20s guys like going out there, and we were chatting on the chair, and like he wants to come on the podcast and like talk about his experience through this injury and everything. So I think the dial is shifting a little bit in the action sport industry.
It definitely is. You're always going to have like a variety, though. I feel like you're always going to have the heavy. The 10% rule is what we called it. You ever hear about that?
No, I haven't heard that.
Like there's an unspoken rule in skiing where you have to spend 10% of your winnings at the bar that night.
Wow.
So like when I was living in Aspen, you would always do the Kick Aspen Big Air, and like top three, we pretty big bar tab, with top three, like.
Yeah.
But like that's the kind of stuff. I don't know if that rule's still into play, and I kind of hope it isn't.
Yeah.
But that's what I grew up around.
Yeah, for sure. Alex has talked about that on his episode of the podcast, that it's funny how when things start going really good in life, like you're winning comps, or in my experience, like as of recently, it's like I went from everyone knew Austin as being like that dude that got in the accident and then got hooked on drugs, and he's kind of just a junkie now. And the second the dial shifts and you start doing better, whether it's skiing or business or whatever, people start like gravitating towards that. And Alex was saying like, he won the Big Air as an alternate that year. I think it was 2011 in the Big Air. And money starts rolling in, so do the people, and so do the bar tabs. Like, people, bar tabs, and women, like, that. And he was like, it was this crazy experience that I had never experienced before. He explained that he was always kind of felt like he was on the precipice in freestyle skiing, that he was not quite number one, and like winning that Big Air was like a huge shift for him. And money for drugs and bar tabs and people. And
Yeah, I mean, like the insta fame can bring a lot of people down, and I feel like it takes a really strong person to like be able to not let the fame kind of turn them into the person they're not.
yeah,
You know, I definitely witnessed like a lot of friends
oh yeah,
kind of become pretty famous over the years, and some of them definitely kind of turned the ego like switched, you know, and
yeah, they become unapproachable.
exactly. Yeah, and it's like that's just built-in character. Like I don't think it's really
Yeah.
hard not to have some sort of reaction mentally to like a big time fame like increase.
Yeah, it's that's addiction in and of itself. That
Yeah.
like instant gratification. It's like, whoa,
Yeah.
people like me. I'm cool.
You can
It's
basically at any point, you know, you can look at it and be like, I have so many people that are standing behind me. I can do all this and still get away with it, kind of thing. And
yeah, it's
probably not for the best, you know. Sometimes you can start to really, yeah.
so you're here in Winter Park now for a little bit. You were mentioning you've got some showings coming up for a film.
Yeah, so the September 6th, 7th, and 8th this year is the Winter Park Film Festival, but we're now doing these kind of activation donation events
Cool.
outside of the film festival calendar.
Yeah.
April 12th, we're showing this 1969 film called Downhill Racer that Robert Redford starred in.
Yeah.
And then his kind of stunt double is Bob Singley, who has lived here for most of his life
Yeah.
in Winter Park. And he's going to kind of be there talking about what it was like filming
Yeah.
Downhill Racer, since, I mean, it's like one of the first, if not the first, Hollywood ski film.
Yeah.
So it's pretty iconic.
Yeah, that's awesome. And so 6th, 7th, and 8th is the film festival, September.
Yep.
What is surrounding the event? Is it kind of set up like Sundance, or like what's kind of the approach? What will the weekend look like?
Definitely not set up like Sundance. You
Yeah.
know, maybe someday it'll get to that level.
Yeah.
This year, the second year, we actually have one of the events in this house.
Oh, awesome.
Kind of more for like the sponsors, the donations, and all the filmmakers.
Yeah.
And then we have a great movie theater down in town that we show all of our films at. And then after each screening night, we have parties around either Winter Park or Fraser at different establishments.
Awesome.
And then this year, something special that I'm really looking forward to is on Sunday, we're going to the top of the mountain and doing the award ceremony at Sunspot. So
Amazing.
we'll all get in the gondola, go up there, and give
Sweet.
the awards to the best films and be on top of a mountain and celebrate probably the best way you can.
Yeah, that's incredible. I will definitely be in attendance.
Please.
Yeah, it sounds like a fun weekend. I am a lover of small town kind of vibes, and Sundance is its own thing. It's gotten, the glitz, the glam, the fame.
That's kind of like how we pitch this film festival to people. We're so small that like it's actually, you can connect with real people and get to talk to the filmmakers, but you can also meet so many people within the week because everyone's there. It's not like Sundance where you're just like, if you don't know somebody big or you are somebody big, like
It doesn't matter.
Yeah, exactly.
There's no it's not.
Yeah.
You guys aren't a red carpet event.
No.
You're trying to highlight the film the films and the makers rather than
Ex-
everything else around it.
Yeah, exactly. So last year we had Todd Schlopey, Alex's
Oh, yeah?
dad, come speak at the event. I don't know if you know anything about Todd,
Is
but Todd is like
film industry, yeah.
yeah, he's one of the biggest first ACs in the industry. Like worked on Revenant, Ski Patroller was his first movie. He did Transformers and Mr. and Mrs. Smith and Wanted.
Yeah.
So he came and did like an hour and a half presentation about like all the gear that they use and kind of different stories of working with actors like Angelina Jolie and Morgan Freeman.
Yeah.
And it was
So cool.
one of the coolest like keynote speakers I've ever seen.
Yeah. After getting closer with Alex, I've read a lot about his dad and the history and everything. It's pretty incredible. And, I think especially being in a small town like Winter Park, it will give it that feel and like love of the mountains and like everything that we're trying to achieve as being like creatives kind of in this outdoor industry. Every year I love going to the Banff Film Festival. Like they're a bigger festival and go on tour or whatever. But like this past year I brought my business partner Jordan, me, him, and some friends went, and the people that go to events like that are like there for the love of the outdoors and also just like the love of the filmmaking. Like it's so cool to watch these smaller budget or even big budget films get the attention and recognition that they deserve.
Exactly.
We've all seen major production movies that have hundreds of millions of dollars behind them, but it's also cool like watching somebody that buys a full frame camera like actually make something a reality.
What I tell people, like a lot of people up here had never been to a film festival until this year.
Yeah.
Until last year, I mean. And when you watch them walk out of like a screening block and you can just tell their like heart has been impacted by what they just witnessed.
Yeah.
Like ask yourself the last time you went to a Hollywood film, like narrative film, that like you walked out and your heart was filled. It's rare. It does happen, but
it's entertainment.
At a film festival, like you get moved.
Yeah.
By not just one film. If you go to like a couple different screening blocks, you might be moved multiple times within a couple of hours. Which is, I remember my first film festival experience and just walking out and being like,
whoa.
That was one of the coolest things I've ever experienced in the film industry.
Yeah. So as a kid, I was a childhood actor in LA and did that whole scene for many years as a kid and commercial acting and everything and being on front of the camera.
Yep.
And as a kid, I always wanted to be behind the camera. Like my parents were always kind of pushing me to do this, and it was great for several years, but I was always like wanting to learn about, how is this all being done? How does this become a reality? Mm-hmm. Like, I'm just standing there and acting and the camera's facing me. Like, what are the 75 people behind the camera doing? Like, they all have a job. They're all doing something to, like, make this thing a reality. And I think that's what's so cool about, like, film festivals. Like, as a kid, things would get, like, featured in film festivals and, like, the Hollywood game, like agents and managers and everyone, and you have to like show up and do these things. And it was always cool watching from like behind the scenes, like how somebody consuming the piece of content reacts to it. And then the way that they're able to then go up to say the filmmaker afterwards. It's so much different than, like you were saying, like going to a blockbuster film. You're not really like moved. Like every year there's a handful of films that come out that have maybe a moving story or a documentary or whatever.
The Iron Claw is this year's.
Is it?
Yes.
Is that out?
Yeah. It came out like 3 months ago.
Oh man, I got to see this.
You gotta see it.
What is the story about?
it's a true story about a family that did like the WWE wrestling, and
Okay.
like I'm not into that. So
Yeah.
when my friend approached me about going to watch it, I was like, that's. But I
Yeah.
went. It's shot beautifully, but the story about like at the end it all wraps up, and it's in a nutshell. Spoiler alert. I'm not going to try and spoil it too much, but it's about being a man and like the father figure role of what you present to your kids about being a man. And it's
Yeah.
kind of about this family where the dad was constantly showing like no mercy kind of style, and like at the end, like one of the kids, after losing everything, like literally everything, realizes like it's okay to cry as a man.
Yeah.
That's
I don't think you spoiled too much. I haven't even seen the
I
film.
really
and-
was trying not
Yeah.
to, but like it's
Yeah.
I walked out of there in tears. Like
Yeah. I will definitely have to go give this thing a watch. I think that's that the ideology behind those stories are huge. A lot of times men aren't supposed to show emotion, or
exactly.
the term always is just be a man. And it's like, what the fuck does that even mean? Like, what does that even mean?
Can't even eat a banana these days.
Yeah.
Without...
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So when you head back to LA, what's on your plate? Do you have any cool projects in the works?
Yeah, heading back in like a week. We're shooting a music video for Charlotte Devaney.
Cool.
Her husband is kind of one of the biggest drum and bass artists. Like started that whole scene, so
Yeah.
really excited to like work with them. Shooting a wedding up in Reno, and
Cool.
a couple drone projects after that, but always going to be working on the Alive Film Challenge and
Yeah.
the Winter Park Film Festival too.
Yeah. So is today the 11th? Today is the deadline for pitch decks for the film.
Well, you can, like, we're not really asking for pitch decks.
Okay.
The deadline for actual submissions is, if I said April 11th, I was wrong. It was August 11th.
Oh, August 11th.
August 11th.
Okay.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's
So people are submitting completed films.
completed films because we want to screen them at the festival.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay. Because when you said April 11th, I was like, oh man,
Oh, God.
this might not even come
Yeah.
out in time.
Yeah. No. Sorry,
yeah.
August.
August 11th. I'll put in a little footnote there in the podcast and links for
Yeah,
anyone
appreciate
interested in submitting. I think it's a pretty incredible thing that you guys are creating, and like I said, that's what attracted me to your story and everything. Is there needs to be more of this happening.
The goal is to take it outside of the film festival.
Yeah.
I would love to, once we start getting really good submissions each year, to start bringing them to other film festivals.
Yeah.
And then like the dream would be to have a package of 5 or 10 excellent films about mental health and addiction that Netflix or Amazon Prime would pick up.
Yeah.
And then, these filmmakers are getting their work into these huge entities, and we're also getting the message out there more. So that's like the big goal.
Yeah. It's been super cool. I know you were showing me a little sneak peek of a project you're doing with Trevor Kennison, and man, the day that I saw Full Circle hit Netflix, it was like, holy shit.
That's
like
a powerful film.
Yeah, super powerful film, And I think, say what you want about Level One. I think there's a mixed message about Level One in the industry. They're amazing filmmakers, but seeing Level One and Trevor Kennison, like, that's the big stage. That's like the made it stage. And the day that I got that notification that it was like, or whatever, saw it on social media, like Full Circle was on Netflix, I was like, holy shit, this is awesome.
As I say, Josh Berman is one of the most talented filmmakers I know.
Yeah.
To be able to take it from like skiing to that level is
pretty incredible.
Yeah, not many people, like, as somebody who works on documentaries, it's like that's a whole new ballpark.
Yeah.
And it's to be able to then, like, it's like a double entendre, you know, maybe even triple, like the amount of full circles are in the film there are.
Yeah. That kid is pretty fucking badass, man.
Yeah.
And the way that they were able to highlight not only the injury, but then, like, they tied in, like, the mental health, and, like, Trevor mentioned, like, heavy drug use and, like, all the things that came with that. As someone that, you know, I sent him a message a while ago, right after I saw the film, and, like, how much it meant to me. Mm-hmm. I feel incredibly lucky that I had burst fractures T2 through T8 in my thoracic spine, C6, C7 in my neck, and the fact that, like, I'm sitting here and walking and skiing is just, like, after I saw that film, I mean, I was crying the whole time like a baby because of how much I related to that story, that it was like, holy shit, like, I feel so fortunate that I am able to walk. But then seeing Trevor getting the shittier option of a spinal injury and still making the best of it, and, like, this dude is crazy.
I mean, I constantly think about, if I was in his shoes, how I would, like, react to it mentally, and, like, I can never, like, when I think about it, get to a point of being like, I would be as happy as Trevor. Like, kudos to him for being able to come out of that and turn his life into something that powerful.
Yeah. And it's been crazy to watch because, like, nobody knew the name Trevor Kennison before his accident. And most people...
He was a plumber.
Yeah.
Like,
he was a...
blue collar.
Yeah.
Nobody knew him.
Yeah.
That's, like, probably one of the coolest parts of the whole story. Like,
yeah.
He wasn't an action sports athlete that had been training, like, his whole life and then got hurt and came back. It's like he picked himself up out of the literal dirt and made himself something.
Yeah. It's cool to watch. Yeah. And, you know, he rides here at Winter Park a lot. This is his kind of home mountain. It's been, as a fellow Colorado skier and someone that also broke their spine, it's like, man, this is inspirational and cool. And I constantly think about this. There's, like, days that I wake up and it's like, oh man, I don't want to go skiing. I don't want to go shoot this content or whatever. He, like, pops in my mind all the time. And I think, all right, I got the better outcome of the spinal injury. Like, I can, like, if he's getting up and doing it every single day, and it's inspiration to, and you don't even have to have a spinal injury. No. Like, it's just, like, inspiration that dude gets up and charges. Like, a double backflip and a sit ski? What the fuck? Like, it's...
And the great thing is like, I feel like he's got more. I know he's hungry. Like,
yeah. And then seeing projects like the Winter Park setting up the jump rail and flipping onto, like, it's crazy. All of...
Well, I mean, it's like Winter Park has always been kind of like, with NSCD, been a leader in the adaptive sports world. Yeah. And it's that's like another thing with the film festival that we've tried to embrace as well. we have a disability film challenge. So filmmakers with disabilities or films about people with disabilities can submit.
Yeah.
And then this will be the first year, the day before the film festival, we're doing a disability film workshop.
That's
And
awesome.
Scott Klum, who goes by Autistic Filmmaker online, he's leading it and gonna kind of teach how to use the Hollywood cameras and lighting techniques, and it should be a pretty epic day.
Yeah, that is awesome. So I always give people the option. We can use the term since we're in recovery. Any burning desires, anything you want to talk about, any social plugs, any Alive Film Festival stuff.
We talked about a lot of that. I mean, I guess like
Just because it's so fresh, like we up here, like, and especially in mountain communities, experience like a lot of tragedy.
Yes.
You know, up here we just lost yesterday or 2 days
Two
ago.
days ago. Yeah.
Two really, really important people up here in two different accidents on the same day, and it's like suicide rates are like 2 or 3 times the national average, and you know, just like the action sports industry that puts us in such danger and can lead to tragic outcomes.
Yeah.
You know, we're not invincible to what life is going to present us, and I think what you're doing and kind of just getting people involved in this conversation
Yeah.
is huge, and I just want to say thank you.
Yeah. Of course,
I
man.
really appreciate it. I want people to reach out to me on my socials or through my websites or text, phone calls, and just kind of if they need help to hit me up. I'm kind of an open door with that world.
Yeah, and I know people will. We've had a lot of guests come on here, and you know, it's always a pleasure having conversations like this. I've found my niche in going against the grain.
Yeah,
Like,
I respect
and
that.
it's, I think, so much of, you know, we talked about it earlier, it's like all like acting, like so much of like the creative world is just like you don't actually get to see what is happening behind closed doors, whether it's athletes, filmmakers, whatever. And action sports athletes, I mean, we were just talking before this, like you're on a very fine line, and that pendulum can swing in either direction. It's the most rewarding thing in the world when it goes right.
Yeah.
And the opposite is unfortunately what has happened this past week, and like losing people in the community. And I know that there's some options right now. I saw GoFundMe's and stuff, you know, for Dallas's family. So, you know, I'm going to get that out there, and
that would be great. Yeah.
you know, this is it's a terrible thing when people that young, especially, they're pushing themselves to make a name for themselves, and in action sports, like I just said, you know, it's a fine line, and
Yeah, it's, I guess, like something that keeps me kind of positive is like, and I'm sure you were pretty close to the other side, is like he went out doing something like he loved and pushing his body to like the
actual limit.
Yeah, and like you see so many people lose their lives nowadays to like drugs and suicide.
Yeah.
And it's like, I mean, it's hard either one. Like you're losing somebody special, but it's like ski accidents, you know, they're sending it. And,
Yeah.
but you've been in both places.
Yeah. Yeah. And that adrenaline rush, that the reward of when it goes right, is better than any drug I've ever done. But I also keep in the back of my mind, as we were talking earlier, like that's kind of where my shift into big mountain skiing happened. Is I still get that adrenaline rush, and it is the best drug I've ever done. Skiing and action sports are my favorite drug on the planet. They're my drug of choice today.
That's what I turn to fill my cup afterwards. You know, I always tell people, like, you can't get rid of addiction.
Yeah.
You can only trade addictions.
Yeah.
So when you put down the drink or the drug, you better be prepared to choose which addiction you're picking up next, because you want it to be the right one.
Yeah. And the brain works in very mysterious ways in what we get hooked to. So, you know, for the listeners, I'll be putting some links for the GoFundMe for Dallas's family in this obviously very difficult time. And, you know, Alex and I did a fundraiser with the American Foundation of Suicide Prevention. They're like an awesome resource. It was an incredible time working with them and like pushing the word about suicide, and they're an awesome nonprofit foundation that it's like they're an open door policy. It's kind of, and they put on events like the one I did with Alex, or ways to like get the word out there, but also get the word out there in a way that if you are like on the edge there, that there are people, and it doesn't matter who you are. You can be a X Games gold medalist, Alex Shlopi, or you can be a blue collar whoever. Like, it doesn't like discriminate. Mental health and addiction does not discriminate. And so, you know, for the listeners, I'll put resources for them as well. Anyways, total pleasure having you on the podcast, man.
Thank you for having me. It's fun talking about this stuff. It's kind of hard, but it's also like, I think people need this.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Well, thank you so much, and thank you to all the listeners, and we will chat soon. Thanks so much, man.
Thanks, Austin.
Yeah. Boom.